Chapter 2. Beyond the valley, in the mountains, the vampire siege camp sprawled like a wound across the snow. It was an absolute aesthetic nightmare, frankly speaking. Hundreds of tents of rough black cloth stretched over the ridge, with their heavy stakes driven deep into the frozen, unforgiving earth. We were fighting a desperate war for our very survival against the department. Yet my kin still insisted on leaning into the most predictable, melodramatic metaphors imaginable. Hissing torches cast ugly shadows against the icy rocks, illuminating deep claw marks and dark bloodstains that told pathetic tales of restless hunger. I watched vampires move through the camp in the gloom. Some were obsessively sharpening their claws, while others were draining whatever miserable captured prey they had managed to drag into the shadows. The entire place reeked violently of iron and frost, feeling exactly like what it was, a cruel city of predators, just waiting to strike its prey. I hated the cold. I hated the dirt, and what I especially hated is waiting. I, however, absolutely refused to participate in this whole charade. In the very heart of this miserable camp, my father volunteers Crimson Tents to depart. Its expensive silk walls rippled in the bitter wind like freshly spilled blood. Inside this marginally more acceptable space, I sat comfortably on a fur-draped chair. I had chosen a heavy red velvet dress for the occasion, and I let it pool around me. My black hair spilled carelessly over one shoulder, and my red eyes were full of mischief as I lazily twirled a syringe of ancient vampire poison. The needle catching the dim light was every bit as sharp as my wit. This little glass vial was supposedly the answer to all our problems. A few drops of this distilled nightmare designed specifically to unravel the magical makeup of a high-tier mage. Though I found it terribly inelegant. Stabbing someone with a syringe lacked the poetry of a clean claw strike. But there is must when the world is ending. So, Père, enlighten me, I said, letting my voice drop to a low, sarcastic purr. How do we snatch this orb of isolation from White Rock's claws? Sounds like a delightful little chasse, no? Volunteer stood by a sprawling map of the Simeon corridor. His black hair fell like a dark curtain over his perfectly pale, ageless face. His crimson eyes were entirely calm. His posture was radiating the arrogance of a lord, utterly untouched by the storm's filth outside. Martha, your tongue is as sharp as our purpose, he said. His voice was as smooth as velvet, and every single word he said was carefully measured. The orb is our salvation. It binds the corridor's paths, forcing all who enter our world to do so through an only single door. With it, we can stop the department's dogs from enslaving us once and for all. Oh yes, the department, the self-appointed architects of the universe who viewed anyone with fangs as a statistical error to be forcefully corrected. They wanted to micromanage the Simeon corridor, charting its doors and placing their gray-masked agents at every threshold. My father was entirely in his right to want to stop them, even if his methods were hopelessly theatrical. I smirked, leaning back deeper into the furs. Oh, très bien. One door to rule them all, huh? But White Rock's not exactly serving tea and biscuits, is it? Remus and his petite flamme, Sasha, will burn us to ashes. Bonne chance, père. A flicker of dry amusement passed through Volunteer's eyes. The castle's shields are strong, but the corridor betrays them. Its cracks grow wider, and we are the shadows that slip through. At dawn, we will overwhelm their gates, strike their tower, and take the orb. Precision, my daughter, not just reckless hunger. I tilted my head, letting my red eyes narrow at him. And Sasha's fire. That girl's got more spark than a storm, ma chérie. One wrong move, and we're ash. And I wasn't exaggerating. The Lesto girl was a walking disaster area of raw, unpolished magic. Approaching her in a confined space like a stone tower was essentially volunteering for a fiery cremation. You are carrying the poison, Volunteer stated, with his tone completely unchanged. One strike and her magic dies. Trust in our cause, Martha. The department seeks to chain us, but we will be free. I let out a long, dramatic sigh, tossing the deadly syringe carelessly onto the wooden table. D'accord, let's dance your noble waltz, but if we're dust by noon, I will haunt you first. My sarcasm was a finely tuned instrument over the decades, hiding the deep unease that was currently twisting inside, a quiet whisper of doubt that I absolutely refused to name aloud. If this grand plan failed, there would be no retreating. The department would burn this entire mountain range just to make a point. As the curtain of the snowstorm finally began to fade into a tolerable silence, I slipped from the heavy silk tent. My boots were crunching loudly on the packed snow. I found a rock positioned at the very edge of the camp and settled onto it, keeping my red eyes fixed on the dark shape of White Rock Castle down below. The storm had calmed significantly, leaving behind a frozen world wrapped in a heavy, silver silence. The full moon hung low in the sky. Its pale light was carving the castle's ancient towers into sharp, obsidian edges. Stray snowflakes drifted lazily through the air, catching the moon's glow so they looked like tiny falling stars, while the valley itself shimmered like a frozen sea surrounding the dark fortress. It was undeniably beautiful, yet as cruel as Blade's edge. The absolute stillness looked as if it was almost mocking all the blood that was about to come. A soft step broke the icy quiet. Vera settled onto the rock beside me. Her brown hair was a tangled mess in the wind. Her purple eyes were glowing in the dark. Vera was one of the few tolerable aspects of this miserable army. She didn't buy into the grand mythology of our kind. She just wanted to survive the night and maybe find a comfortable bed to sleep in. We were almost like spirit relatives in our mutual disgust for freezing in the mud. Staring at our doom? Vera asked. Her voice carried a dry but unmistakable warmth. I let out an unladylike snort, just admiring the view. Before it's painted red, ma chérie. What's your bet? Do we grab the orb tomorrow, or are we firewood for Sasha's fire? Vera merely shrugged. Her sharp fangs were catching the moonlight. We've got 1,000 fangs, and the Volunteer is colder than this snow. But Remus is no fool and Sasha is a walking blaze. I think that we will take the orb, but it will cost us. because blood always does. Charming, I muttered, piercing the word with sharp sarcasm. Bonne chance to us, then. I'd rather not be a snare under stones, that is for sure. Vera flashed a brief, bitter grin. Same. But if we win, the department will be done chasing us. One door, one world, all ours. Worth a few bites, maybe. I didn't offer a reply, letting my eyes drift back to the moonlit castle in the valley. The intoxicating idea of freedom sang brightly in my blood, but so did the crushing weight of tomorrow's upcoming slaughter. Sitting there, in the freezing night, I genuinely wasn't sure which of the two burned brighter inside me. I hated the department's bureaucratic oppression, but I also had absolutely no desire to die on the frozen steps of a human fortress just to satisfy my father's glorious ambitions. I knew exactly what was happening back in Volunteer's tent, where the air was thick with the scent of melting wax and polished steel. He was standing over his map. His red eyes were tracing the invisible paths of the corridor. He would summon a scarred vampire to kneel before him. His voice would be perfectly calm and precise as he gave the order. Send a messenger to White Rock. Tell Rimus that we strike at 9 tomorrow morning. Let them choke on their fear tonight. The vampire would nod, rising swiftly, and the messenger would slip into the dark. His cloak would be a mere shadow against the white snow. He would descend the mountain with his red eyes fixed on White Rock's towers. The snow would crunch softly beneath him, while the wind carried a low moan, as if the valley itself grieved for the dawn to come. The castle loomed closer to him now. Its gates were unyielding. Its magical shields were flickering like a dying candle in the storm. And above it all, the full moon watched like a cold, silent judge, spilling its silver light over the valley and casting shadows that danced across the snow. It saw the castle's stubborn defiance, the vampire's ravenous hunger, and the fragile thread of fate binding us all together. And it spoke not a single word, as moons always do.